All right, in this demonstration, I want to show you how you can set up your study for the base template for your line exploration. Now, at this point, you should have already figured out how to get to this part of the demonstration. There were a couple other videos before this, so if you haven't seen the first one that shows you how to set this up as a template, and then generate a file from that template, then you should go back and look for the tutorial that is called Making Study Template Base. Okay, and what that is going to show you how to do, like I said before, is how to make an Adobe Illustrator template file, which is a .ait file, and then we made this file from going up to File, and then New from Template, and then we chose the template that we had saved, and then saved this as this file name. Okay, so we also, I went through and showed you how to, you know, do all of the layers and everything, and using the ellipse tool to draw the circles. So really all I'm going to show you in this demo is kind of how to draw lines, just for something that's really, really simple, really basic, and not complex lines, just straight lines. And I'm not going to go through the entire sequence that I also went through with the point. I'm going to just sort of show you how to do some line stuff, keep it short and simple, because you should already know how to do all of the layer management stuff. Okay, so right here we've got a line segment tool, all right, and what I'm going to do is select that, and then the other thing too is if you go down below, you see our foreground and our background color. Foreground is white. We actually don't need a fill on that because a line is not a closed path. It's just a line segment that has 2 points at either end. It has 1 point at either end, so it has 2 points. And so if I go here and just hit the strike through, it'll strike through the foreground, so we don't need that. And then I'm going to leave the stroke as black. So the other thing is that I'll go ahead and I'm going to click right outside of here, and I'm going to hold down my shift key, and you see it starting to draw a line, and there's my line. Now, you might not be able to see it unless you blow it up a little bit, and you might even need to deselect because the color of the line is black, but the color of the selection is blue. So if you're not sure about that, then you can go ahead and just click off of it somewhere. But if you want to find out the properties of that line, you do need to click on it. And one of the things you'll notice, you have 2 different ways of looking at how that stroke is being applied. Up here in the options panel, you see it says stroke, and then it's got 1 point, okay? And it's uniform. You want to make sure that it is uniform and that it's a basic line, that it's not something fancy, okay? We're not doing fancy and non-uniform lines yet. Okay, so go ahead and you can leave it at 1 point. I don't want you to start exploring like this yet. All right, that's not what I want you to do. I want you to just leave it at 1 point. We'll get to that kind of stuff later. And so then you can go ahead and if it's really, really hard to see, you can increase it, I guess, to like maybe 1.25. But here's the trick. Whatever line you make, all of the duplicates that you make from it, let's say it's 1.25, all the duplicates that you make from that line have to be exactly the same. You can't vary the lines yet, not in this not in this part of the assignment. So anyway, it's very similar to the last thing where you can just select an object, and then I can click and hold, and then I hold down the option key, and uh, and here you see I can move it wherever I want. Well, I want to keep it directly up and down, so I'm going to hold down the shift key, okay, and that's going to keep it constrained to the vertical axis, okay, and then I'll just drop it. Okay, so now I've got a couple of lines, and then I can move this, and holding down the shift key is just going to move it. It's not going to duplicate it. The option is the one, or I keep saying option, but if you're on Windows, it's Alt. Okay, on a Mac, it's Option. If I click and hold this while I'm holding Shift, it doesn't duplicate it. It just moves it in a constrained fashion. Okay, so I'm just going to make some lines here. So if I click out here and I drag, I can select both of these lines, and then I'm going to Shift Option drag again. Okay, and then now I've got 4 lines. I'm going to click one more line because we only want 5 lines, and there we have it. Okay, so now we've got 5 lines, and that's really all you need. Now it doesn't matter if these extend beyond, because whenever you would go to do something different with the artboard, export it or whatever, you could actually, if it was a JPEG or something like that, then you could prevent it from going beyond the artboard. But or you could just put a clipping mask over it, which we haven't talked about yet. But if you wanted to, it would be easy enough to select all of these, and literally you can just drag this end in and just have it stop at the edge of the file. And one of the things you'll notice too is it's kind of hard to get it to go right to the edge of the file. So what you can do is you can come up to View, and then you can go down to Snap, and you could say Snap to Grid, Snap to Point, Snap to Pixel. I'll say Snap to Grid. And so now whenever I pull that in, it just wants to snap to the edge of the document, right? I don't have to really try very hard. It just goes right to where I want it to go. Just remember that if you turn Snap to Grid on, or any of these snaps, if you turn any snaps on, later you might need to come back and turn it off if you're trying to do some really, really fine, finicky work when the grid is getting in your way. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn mine off. So anyway, there I've got my 5 lines now, and this is the point at which I would say, you don't start doing your exploration. You actually, I would recommend that you go ahead and start organizing your stuff the way that you did in your layers over in the point study, so that you have copies of them. But it's really up to you how you want to do it. If you are a novice with Illustrator, I would recommend that you stay very organized. If you're an old hat at it, then you can do it however you want. All right, but the way that I had shown you is to select these, make a group, and then you can start to duplicate them and put them into different layers and stuff like that. Okay. And later, what you'll do is, ultimately you're going to arrange these in ways where you start to explore, distances. Like maybe, you could take a couple of these and move them down, and maybe, this one is up here. You start to explore some different layouts of how these lines look together, and, like, does that feel unbalanced? And it might, so you might think about later whenever you start to actually arrange these, like, why does this feel so unbalanced? Maybe it's because this starts to create kind of a thin line. Your eyes start to make these two become one unit. And so as a result of that, what you might end up wanting to do is take one of these lines and move it up higher or something. I don't know. I'm not telling you what to do. I just, suggesting that you do some exploration though. Okay. All right, so just really quickly, I'm going to go ahead and jump over here to the plane file that I had created from the template, and so that you don't have to watch a whole separate demonstration where I show you how to use the rectangle tool, I'll just do this real quickly. All right, so again, you would, create the correct name for this layer and organize your layers the way that I showed you how to do in the point demonstration. But just to be efficient, right now I really just want to show you how to use the rectangle tool and how to create the dimensions that I want you to use for this part of the assignment. So if you are just walking into this, you probably see the ellipse tool in your tool panel. So if you click and hold the ellipse tool, that's how you find the rectangle tool. And so I'm just going to go here in the first artboard, and if I click and hold Shift while I'm dragging out my mouse, okay, I will get a perfectly constrained object, a perfectly constrained square. Now you'll notice that it's just an outline right now. If I grab my black selection tool and I click somewhere else, you see it's just an outline. If you look down here in the foreground stroke area, I could go over here and click the swap fill and stroke button, but I want to take my stroke and I want to turn the stroke off. I don't want it to be white. I want it to have that strike through. And then, so I've got my square now, it's a black square. And if I go up to the transform tool, we're going to do the same thing that we did in the circle. I'm going to change this to 0.85. And because my constrain proportions is on, whenever I hit return, you can see that it changed both height and width for me. Okay, so I've got this square, and now it's the same thing. I want to duplicate it. I'll hold down Option or Alt on Windows, Option on a Mac, and I'm not paying any attention to where I'm placing it because, you know, right now it's I'm going to be moving them around later anyway. So if I want to select both of these now, just to be efficient, I can hold down Option again to reproduce, and then I can take one of these and Option yet again. Oops, I need to undo that. Okay, hold down the Option or Alt key. Okay, there, I think I let up off of it too soon. So now I've got 5 squares that I can start to do stuff with. And again, this is where you would just want to refer back to the previous demonstration when I showed you how to set stuff up with point. You know, if you're not sure how to proceed from here, you could actually go back and watch the point demo and see how to set up your layers and stuff if you've forgotten that. It's the same principle, just that these are squares instead of circles. Okay. All right, so that's going to do it for this demo, and you can go ahead and make sure to bring all your files and stuff to class after you get them fully set up. Unless you're in an online class, in which case you can just move on to the next set of tutorials.